Hey everybody, we're back with another deep dive into the existence and grades of key books in the Silver Age Pedigree collections. This week we're doing Amazing Spider-Man number 14, which is a new addition to the list. I'm adding a few books as we go through this kind of deep dive, and Amazing Spider-Man number 14 is one I've added because I just think it's the most important villain for the most important superhero. Kind of seems like a pretty good one to cover, right? And there are a lot of Pedigree copies, so it makes sense. So let's take a look. It's not my favorite Amazing Spider-Man villain key, by the way. That's Amazing Spider-Man number 50. Daredevil fan, you get it, but it's still a very cool book. There's a Hulk appearance, too. You gotta love that. Before we get into the deep dive, let's do a little overview. There's a 9.2 Bethlehem, a 9.0 John Fantuccio, a 7.5 Mass Copy, a 9.6 Northland, a 9.6 Pacific Coast, which is the best of the Pedigree books, a 9.0 Susha News, a 9.6 Twin Cities, which is the best Twin Cities key. There are a lot of Twin Cities keys. You can see the list here. Like it's almost everything. There's a Twin Cities key. And they're all like mid-grade, except for this one, and the Amazing Spider-Man number 1. The Amazing Spider-Man number 1 is a 9.4. But this is the best Twin Cities key. And a 9.2 White Mountain. My favorite Pedigree, as you know. Or maybe not. Maybe this is your first time on the channel. If it is, then I'm a huge fan of the White Mountain Pedigree. So here's the census. There's 198, which I'm going to show you because it's incredible. 29 9.6s, 32 9.4s, 63 9.2s, and 92 9.0s as of this recording, which is March 6th, 2025. First book, Bethlehem, Amazing Spider-Man number 14, CGC 9.2, off-white. Let's take a look at the grader's notes. Look at the copious grader's notes on this one. This is a 9.2. It should be a pretty good book. It is a pretty good book, actually, if you look at the scan. But with these grader's notes, you'd think it was graded in 2001 and not 2014. So back in the day, they used to put like notations about damage on the label, which they took away to much chagrin on the CGC forum. But I mean, as you'll see later, there's it's surprising now when you see grader's notes for higher grade books, but all of these things are actually pretty indicative of the pedigree. So a little tanning, some shadows, whatever. So like Bethlehem has this, especially with the earlier books, it has this idea that they're like kind of fried, right? They're still high grade, but they're not the greatest page quality. Although that's not actually true with the later books. The later books are in pretty good shape. But, it is like moderate dust shadow and some tanning and some, X, Y, and Z. So, I prefer the grader's notes. So I'm not complaining that they're there, but it is funny because they kind of pull them back a little bit as time has gone on. This book sold for $7,410 at Comic Connect in 2017. That is a great buy. 9.2 Pedigree copy, that's $20,000 plus book right now. John G. Fantuccio, Amazing Spider-Man number 14, CGC 9.0, white pages. Really attractive copy for the grade. If I was in the market for this particular book, this would be the one I would target. Although the serial number returns no results, so maybe it's a 9.4 now, and then it would be like out of my price range for this particular book because I'm not like breaking the bank for this book, but I'd love a 9.0. Like that's right in my wheelhouse for a key like this. It sold for $8,355 at Comic Link in February of 2017, which is also a good buy, as it's a $13,000 book right now. It's not as good as $7,000 for a $20,000 book, but it's still pretty good buy. And a gorgeous copy. Sorry for the tiny little image. There is a mass copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 14, CGC 7.5. It sold for $1,901 in 2002. This is from the JP the Mint catalog, and there are a couple of instances where I've later learned that things like there was an auction, the JP the Mint auction, and the book sold in the auction, and then some things didn't sell in the auction, and they sold like in private sale later. And so $1,901 indicates to me that this sold in the auction. But it is one of those things where you always have to kind of like double check when you find it in the JP the Mint catalog, which again, I'm doing the Sotheby's catalog next because that Sotheby's 1991 catalog is incredible. But I do have to do the JP the Mint catalog. The problem with doing the JP the Mint catalog is I have to tell the story of JP the Mint's intro into the hobby. And so I may have to do a little bit of like journalism on that one, which is fine. I've written a lot professionally. Theoretically, you could call me a journalist, I guess, at some point in my life. But it's a lot of work, right? But it's also a fascinating story. And then the catalog is ridiculous. Like what he did when he came into the hobby was amazing. And so this is one of the books. And yeah, it's Amazing Spider-Man number 14, Mass Pedigree. There is a Northland copy. Oh, by the way, so I can't read. So I've been showing you the grader's notes. I can't figure out the grader's notes. I can't figure out the serial number on that. I mean, look at this scan. This is a quarter page of the catalog. I cannot, even with a magnifying glass, figure out what the serial number is for that. So who knows? I wonder if it's still in the CGC holder from 2001. Scary. Northland copy, Amazing Spider-Man number 14, CGC 9.6. So it's surprise, right? So I talked about there was issues with the 9.2 having grader's notes. I barely remember seeing grader's notes on a 9.6 Silver Age book. The scan here is pretty burned out. It's an older scan, so I can't really see the light crease on the back. I can see one kind of micro tick stress line on the front cover. So I don't know. I'd love to see a better scan. I'd also love to see what the book would grade at in 2024. Also after having lived in an old holder for that long as well, which is always scary, as we know. It sold for $23,000 in 2002 at Heritage. I haven't mentioned it yet, but 9.6 prices on this book are crazy. They're crazy. Look at this chart. Prices in 2023 were below the prices from 2009. Like if you're buying this book, that chart is treacherous. There are periods when you could get in and it's fine. So before 2006, you're fine. Between 2011 and 2019, you're fine. But if you were buying between 2006 and 2011, you might have taken a bath later, which is abnormal, really, for like a high-grade mega key, semi-mega key. I don't know. It's a big key. I mean, if you talk to Spider-Man collectors, they love this book. You would think that that's like a buy it and forget it and you're fine kind of thing. And it just sometimes, the hobby is unpredictable. So, yeah. So the last sale was $38,000 in 2023. A 9.6 sold for $53,195 in 2009. And then copies sold for as low as $16,900 in 2018. In lower grades, so 9.2, 9.4, and below, the value has kind of ticked up generally. It just, starts lower and goes higher, over the same time period. So it's not like the book itself has had these fluctuations. It's just in 9.6. Actually, it would be an interesting video to trace the kind of winners and losers in that list, because there are some people that did incredibly well. If you bought for $16,900 in 2018 and sold for $48,000 in 2021, that's pretty good. If you bought for $53,195 in 2009 and sold at any point in the next ensuing, up until now, right, the 16 years, you've taken a loss. It's crazy, and you just don't know how to react to a book like that. With a price history like that. It's interesting. So Here's, without a doubt, the best Pedigree copy. Pacific Coast, CGC 9.6, Amazing Spider-Man number 14. If money were no object, I'd chase this copy. I know there's a 9.8, but I'm a Pedigree comic nerd, so this would be the one I would chase. In case you're wondering, by the way, the 9.8 is one of the best-looking Silver Age books I've ever seen, so it's actually a close-run thing. Let's just take a look at this. Look at that thing. Those corners would cut you. It looks like it was like put in a chopper, right? It looks like it was just like sliced to be perfect. Yeah, it's unreal. I can't even believe that book was produced in that high of a grade. But just as an anecdote, I did, in fact, when I was a Daredevil collector buying books, I downgraded from like, I forget what it was. It might have been Daredevil 69 or something like that. Not super expensive. But I downgraded from a 9.8 to a 9.6 to get a Pedigree copy. So I would do that, which is abnormal, right? Because it was like it lost me points in the registry or whatever. But I love Pedigree books, so which is, if you look around the channel, I think you'll figure that out pretty quickly. But I'll say it as well to just like cut through any mystery about that. Grader's notes. Okay, so there's literally no Grader's notes at all on this Pacific Coast copy. It's sold previously. It's white pages, by the way. Just, I love it. It's sold previously under 2 separate serial numbers, neither of which still return. So there might have been Grader's notes at some point, but whatever. I looked at it. I can't see anything. So, and honestly, like it's a 9.6 from Silver Age, so I actually wouldn't expect to see Grader's notes. It's kind of weird that they were there. But as we saw with Northland, they can show up. So, I don't know. So this book, like even this book, but like all 9.6s, it's had a treacherous run. Like this chart stinks, right? 2005, it sold for $24,500. 2007, it sold for $37,500. 2016, that seller took a bath, $17,925. And then whoever bought that did okay, but $25,000 is basically what it started at in 2005. And this is a gorgeous copy of an amazing key from the best Silver Age Pedigree. I said it. I mean, it's splitting hairs because White Mountain stretches longer, and there's some. We'll talk about it in the future. I owe you a Pedigree tier list. We need to get more subscribers. Once I do that, I might do a live stream doing it. It'd be fun, but I mean, we got to get the audience for that one because that is going to be exhausting. Even the preparation, which is the research that I'm doing now with like going through all of the named pedigrees in the CGC list, is exhausting. So that video would kill me in a good way, if you can be killed in a good way. Susha News, Amazing Spider-Man number 14, CGC 9.0. No Grader's notes on this one. It's a 9.0, right? Like, I don't know. It's funny with these things. It's like, it's when it was graded, who was grading it, I don't know. It's funny. It's fairly graded. Like, I looked at it. It's a 9.0. I'm not complaining. It's just funny. There's nothing to mention. Like, I don't know. There's a dust shadow on the back cover, right? They mentioned, like, tanning and some dust shadows on other books in this, right? So, like, other books we've looked at. So I would think that they would mention that the dust shadow on the back cover of this book. But they didn't. Still a nice book. Really, really attractive for a 9.0. So. And it sold for $3,277 in December of 2010, which is a great buy. Guaranteed. So, some happy camper. Plus, they've owned this book for 15 years. So. The Twin Cities copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 14 is a CGC 9.6. As I mentioned earlier, this is the best of the many, many, many keys present in the Twin Cities collection. As I mentioned in the video going over the full list, that kind of deep dive, Twin Cities is by far the pedigree with the highest number of verifiable keys. I expect that other pedigrees, White Mountain being one example, might have as many or near as many, but the encyclopedic nature of the Twin Cities collection and the fact that it was sold in the CGC era makes it hard to beat in terms of my research. That's sad. CGC 9.6. Back cover, small tear, small wear, all corners. I can't see the tear, but the upper left-hand corner for a 9.6. I hate to nitpick grades because people like make a job out of it, but like, is that a bindery tear? Is that what they're saying? I guess. And I've had books where I've kind of been like, oh, that's a bindery tear. That's not fair. But like, I don't know. I also didn't, they weren't 9.6s. I wasn't saying it wasn't fair because I didn't get a 9.6. You know, I got like a 9.4 or a 9.2. And I'm like, was it the bindery tear? Man, they had dull blades. It was dull blades. Blame the dull blades. I don't know. It might be a little soft. It's still an attractive copy, but that like kind of bums me out. And then there's the tear. Is that like a Marvel chipping kind of thing? It looks like it was a dull blade day, but like, I don't know. I can't see the tear, so I don't know. And like all 9.6s, this one has had a funny life. 2011, it sold for $22,000. 2014, it sold for a loss, $18,523. In 2018, it sold for $28,000, which is, you know, a nice story for the person that bought it in the middle. And finally, my beloved White Mountain Pedigree makes an appearance with this anciently graded CGC 9.2. The serial number is no longer valid, which is interesting. So it sold in 2021 for $26,000, which was an exceptionally strong result for a 9.2. This was, at the time, the highest price paid for a 9.2. It then sold for a preposterous $33,600, which is almost $10,000 more than the next highest 9.2 that isn't from the White Mountain collection. It would be the second highest 9.4 sale of all time. Spoilers, I've done stuff like this. Like, I've bought White Mountain books for stupid money. And you know, I loved it. I was happy to do it. It was great. I love White Mountain books. So like, somebody did that with us, clearly. Like, somebody was just like, it's a White Mountain copy. The other thing that might be going on is they might have looked at it and said, you know what? That's an old holder. It seemed to have survived. There may be pressable defects. And since the grader's notes are no longer available, but would have been available at that time because it hadn't been regraded yet, you might have seen like finger bends or some of those like really indicative notes about pressable defects. So I don't know, but I mean, somebody went to town, and it's a person after my own heart because I love White Mountain, and I've spent far too much money on relatively for White Mountain copies of certain books. Gladly. I love them. In addition to all the ones that I'm tracking, I don't track Circle 8 because it's sporadic in terms of the keys, but there is a Circle 8 copy, and it's really nice. CGC 9.4. And there you have it. It was a fun set of books, I thought. I've been smiling the whole time, so I think it's indicative of my appreciation for this particular set of books. This is a funny book at the highest end. The terrible, bizarre, unpredictable result at 9.6. But First Green Goblin, it's an awesome book. I love the cover. I love the little like Hulk inset in the right-hand corner. Cool book. And I'm leaving you with the Unstoppable pair. Unstoppable for me because these are my two favorite books that we covered, the White Mountain copy and the Pacific Coast copy. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Give me some likes. Give me some comments about which book you thought was the coolest. What you think about that 9.8, which is like one of the strongest Silver Age 9.8s I've ever seen. It looks like a new book. Like, it looks like a brand new book. Crazy. And then next week, finally, I've been teasing this thing for, 6 weeks or something like that, but it's worth it. It's the beginning of comics maturing to where we now have Heritage selling $20 million of comics in a single auction, comics and original art in a single auction. So it's where we started. Thank you, Sotheby's. Thank you, Jerry Weiss. And I'm going to start that story in my next video. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be pretty crazy. And there's incredible material in there. So I hope you enjoy that one. I hope you enjoyed this one. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.